Yeah, so I'm Aldo. I'm the co-founder of Claro Partners.
And I'm Harry from London, and I've been with Claro and in Barcelona for 3 years.
Oh yeah, that might be worth mentioning as well. I'm from the Netherlands, but I'm what they call a Barcelonian by choice. So about 15 years ago, I moved here, and obviously I love it here. And so today we want to talk about autonomy and alignment for decentralized organizations. Of course, this sounds a little bit like the title of an academic paper, but it's really not going to be like that, okay? We're really going to talk about, how do we create the workplace of the future where people like yourselves actually will enjoy and where you will really meet customer needs, because in the end, the single purpose of any company is always to meet customer needs. So later in the presentation, I would like to get to know you a little bit better, because I don't like to speak to people that I don't know. So what will be the flow for today? So after a very brief introduction about what is Claro Partners, why are we here, right? We want to talk about why do we need a new way of working, and it looks like we need one, right? Because all of you sure had some nice drinks yesterday in Barcelona, and so you could have just stayed in bed and say, I'll come after the coffee break. So thank you for being here. And the second question is, then now that we all agree that we need a new way of working, what could a structure look like when we talk about autonomy and alignment? Who's this new employee? Okay, it's not really an employee. We'll see that in a moment. And what is this new experience of this person? And how can we transition and adapt? So we'll be switching between myself and Harry. He's not just standing there to say hello. And we hope to have also some time for Q&A. But for sure we'll hang around in the coffee break so that we can also can get to know you a little bit more personally. So how did we end up here, right? Here in this place, but also how did we end up with this perspective, with this point of view that we're going to share with you. So just 3 slides about Claro, and I promise I will keep it short. So who is Claro? Who did know Claro before they signed up for this conference? Can you raise your hand? Wow, I'm impressed. Wow, that's nice. That's really nice. It sounds like we are talking to an audience that, that is, I already knew that, of course, from the speakers from yesterday, but that's sort of, we are all in the same family, in the same space, right? We're all innovators and value creators. So we define ourselves, it's always hard to define yourself, right? But we define ourselves as an international business innovation and service design firm. And for us, it's very important when you innovate, you need to innovate for the future, right? You need to skate where the puck is. So that's why, for us, one of our the things that we are most known for is our deep explorations of what we call disruptive shifts. So disruptive shifts is not a trend, it's something much more profound. It is something that is it's like a wave that is creating but never stops and just keeps on growing. Okay, so we typically detect those waves like a good server way before they start forming, and then we help, and then we start serving it, and then we take our clients along with us, and you as well, because we care a lot about sharing a lot about our disruptive shifts with anybody who would like to know more about them. So this is very fundamental for us, and we have been looking at disruptive shifts affecting, the final customer, like Internet of Things, personal data economy, sharing economy, even before that was a word, yeah. And naturally, we were stumbling upon this next disruptive shift, which is that we need a totally new way of working, and that's what we're talking about today. So who is Claro? Who are we? So we are a bunch of misfits. Some of our clients have called us crazy nuts. Okay, it's a compliment. If you were doubting, so why are we misfits? Because we are not exclusively social scientists or designers or business strategists. We are actually working, all of us, at the intersection of those three core capabilities that we believe are necessary to create value for society. That's always for us first. Create value for society, and the value for business will follow. So we are lucky, right? We are really, really lucky because we started this company in 2010. It sounds like not that long ago, but if you are in this field, you know that it's a very, very long time ago, because it was before all those acquisitions and marriages between, or attempted marriages, better said, were happening, right? You know, Accenture, Fjord, McKinsey, Luna, really? And so on, right? So the vision of our company was this idea of combining business thinking and design thinking, if you want to make it a bit more simple. And we just caught the wave, right? Like we are working with our clients, we try to apply that to ourselves as well. So a lot of leading companies in their own field, and just to highlight one of them, let's talk about Standard Bank. Standard Bank is the company that helped us develop this point of view that we're sharing with you. But because they are a similar modern organization as we want to be, and as we are trying them to become, they allow us to freely share this with you. And we have a point of view paper also that you can request, and we will send that to you. And so you get a full understanding of this piece of work. And as always, I'm taking too long, so that's why I'm handing over to Harry to talk a little bit about Standard Bank and how this came about.
So Standard Bank is the second biggest bank in Africa, and we'd been working with them for a while, designing new products, new experiences, and they said, that's great, now we know what we need to innovate. But they said, we're struggling with the how. We don't have the right way of working to actually make these ideas happen as fast as they should be happening. So they said they want us to redesign their way of working, which, landing on you as a project lead, is like, I don't know anything about HR, I don't know anything about change management. Why are they asking us this? We just design experiences.
We didn't know much about South Africa either.
Yes. So what we did was we took what we know about. We know about designing customer experiences, and we applied it to employee experiences. And we know about understanding everything through a human-centered lens, so that's exactly what we did. We, instead of, doing desk research or talking to managers, we actually went into companies, immersed ourselves like anthropologists, and we tried to understand what's the employees' day really like. We followed them around, we spent a few days in these companies, and we tried to get a sense of what really happens in these innovative businesses.
And when you say we, who were those?
It was me, I'm in some of the pictures there. Then we have Evelyn, my colleague, and Ganesh. So Evelyn's from the Netherlands, Ganesh is from Turkey, I'm from the UK, and we went to a whole bunch of other countries as well. So over on the left-hand side, we went to some fintech startups, because that's what the bank's interested in. So we went to Cantox in the top left, which is in Barcelona. We went to SnapScan, which is in Cape Town, South Africa. And then we went to Startup Bootcamp, which is an accelerator network of hundreds of startups, and we wanted to understand how do they coordinate this big network of startups. We went to Google, which is, the first place that everyone has in mind when they talk about an innovative way of working. But actually it was really disappointing. So everyone talks about 20% time, but you get there and you realize it's 120% time. Everyone's so busy doing the work that their boss or their boss's boss is handing onto their plate that they don't really have time to go to the cafes or go to the games room. No one's using the ping pong table, which was great for me. I got to play a bit. And then up at the top, we have a company that looks pretty boring, but that turned out to be our star case, so we're going to talk about that later.
Why do we need new ways of working? Why? Because one of the big reasons is that the traditional organization is struggling to innovate. Oh my God, terrible, right? I actually believe that today, present day, 2017, we are way worse off in terms of how companies innovate than when I started in this field more than 10 years ago. And at the same time, companies are struggling to attract talent. There's so many more exciting alternatives out there. So those two things means that we definitely need a new way of working. So there's sort of when we look at disruptive shifts, we always look at those four factors typically to say, okay, how do those four factors together create the perfect storm for these new disruptive shifts to swell and to get tsunami-like proportions. So the individuals, they want ownership, they want purpose. You all have read about it, of course, millennials and things like that. Who's a millennial here? An actual millennial, not like... Nice try. They have new attitudes towards jobs and lifestyle. In society, customers, they have new expectations. They always want a fantastic customer experience. They have been spoiled by really, really focused, good startups that are anally focused on creating like the best customer experience ever. But also technology allows people to, work remotely, collaborate remotely. I mean, the organizers of this conference apparently are in 3 different cities, and they are running a company of 10 people across Europe. That's possible today very easily. And I don't know about it, but I would imagine that not all those 10 people are actually on the payroll, right? Are they? You see? That's the point. That's the new organization, the network. And the last point is that there's this idea of economies of scale, right? That's very different. It's now much more about economies of small. One of those other massive disruptive shifts. Do you know what is the biggest, by far, the biggest, fastest growing business? Nobody? No? Micro business. Okay? Micro business. Micro business means individuals or small groups of individuals creating value. The reason why it's the fastest growing business is because they can work in networks, and that's why can create the power which is much more mighty than any large corporation could achieve. So therefore, the new organizational model is really like a value exchange network. So our inaugural work back in 2010 was about new models of ownership and value exchange. And this is when we bumped onto this weak signal of value exchange networks, like Uber, like Airbnb. Uber didn't exist, sorry. Airbnb, yeah? Okay, so question. The 3 questions that we are going to answer today is, how does this structure look like? So the vision that I have about this is the following. Traditionally, what do we think about when we think about a bank, right? Let's say the bank as a model company. What do we think about? Buildings, right? Buildings. What else do we think about? Yes. People, right? I hope. Lots of people in the buildings, right? Working until really late. And lots of money, right? So the bank 2.0, Zopa, for example, has neither of those 3, hardly. right? They're just a few people. They don't actually have any money, and they don't have that many people. So the value creation is no longer happening in the boundary of the organization or in the building. There's a lot of people, in many cases many more than in this picture, who are creating value. So the new idea of a company should be something like a brand, which is a value creation hub. Okay, and people get together if they want to become part of that network and create some value. But they're also part of other networks. So that is the point. And again, need to speed up a little bit. So let's start briefly talking about the complexity of this. You know, so if you think about a traditional organization, there's all these things that need to happen. For example, control is much more like a command and control chain. Well, if you think about a network, there's orchestrated and distributed decision making. And making photos is definitely a good idea, because I'm not going to present the whole slide. Another thing is, for example, resources. I found this one of the most exciting, interesting things about networks, is that if you are on top of a big company, you need to allocate resources all the time, like pieces on a chessboard, right? And if you do it wrong, there might be whole branches of your organization that are slurping assets but not creating any value. In a network, it's completely different. Many others have the assets. You know, just think about cars. In the case of Social Car, startup here in Barcelona, or Zopa, where the money is with the users. So it's all the way on the opposite side. So it becomes more about attracting assets, and that makes these networks so powerful and so disruptive. But also, if you are like this, like Standard Bank, how difficult must it be to try to nudge into that direction? So it might all look a bit complicated, and it is complicated. But just let's remember just two fundamental things. The first one is that we are pointing to a new metaphor of the organization. So now is when we are going to ask you another question. So the first question is, who feels that their organization is like a well-oiled machine? Or any machine. Or not well-oiled machine. A machine that maybe is not working that well. Yeah? Yeah? A machine, yeah. Everything about consistency, standardization. It's very clear what every person in the company is doing. And then there's a family. Who feels that their company feels more like a family? Please raise your hand. Yeah, quite a few more. Excellent. So that's a more progressive type of organization, right? But families, as we all know, can be highly dysfunctional. Also, there's the parent-child relationship, which maybe is not ideal. So we believe strongly that the new metaphor of the organization is an organism. Who feels that they are a part of an organism? Okay, a family and an organism.
We are shifting from a family to organism.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, I think the same applies for Claro, actually. Who didn't raise their hand? Many people, no? Please raise your hand if you didn't raise your hand. Okay. So how does your organization feel?
I have to think about that. I think like maybe like a cell of crazy activists.
Excellent. Excellent. A cell of crazy activists. Yeah, these are cells of crazy activists connected to other cells of crazy activists. Okay, so the other simple thing to remember, and we're going to talk about this a lot, especially Harry, is autonomy in alignment. Because the only way these networks will work if there is autonomy in alignment. We are not advocating for chaos here, okay? So there's a big problem, right? So people want freedom. I want freedom to make my own decisions. I want the freedom. I know what I'm doing. Don't bother me. Just leave me to do what I think is best. Well, if everybody is doing that, that's great for maybe for those individuals for a while. But after a while, the customer probably doesn't get what they need. So there's this tension with control. Because if you control everything, if you have a script how a customer service person has to talk to a customer, then it works. So that's why we need autonomy in alignment. So now Harry is going to talk about the structure.
Thanks. I don't have a slide clicker. Oh, yeah. Thanks. Yeah, so we immersed ourselves in these companies, and the pattern we saw is that there's 3 types of structures. There's separate cells. So this is where each person or each team is treated like their own business. They can do everything end to end, and they don't really need to interact with anyone else. Then there's the hub and spoke, so similar, but in the middle you have this hub that can provide maybe a core technology or some financing that helps these individual businesses perform better. And then more connected than that is the network. So each person or team owns one small piece of the product, and they only need to communicate with the other pieces of the product that they touch. There's no need for like a central coordination where everyone gets together. So as we'll talk through examples of a couple of these from ones that we visited. And as we were setting up the project, I was really excited about where I was going to get to immerse myself. And I was talking with Ganesh and Evelyn, like, where are we going? We've been on the phone with companies like Zappos and Mozilla and Netflix. Are we going to San Francisco? Are we going to Seattle? No, they had decided that we're going to the south coast of the UK, to a tiny little seaside town called Poole.
Who knows Poole? Wow.
Not bad.
Impressive.
And we were going to a company called Matt Black Systems. Has anyone heard of that? Awesome. Okay, so you guys are better informed than I was in the project, but like most of the rest of you, I had no idea where I was going. So we turned up on the first day. There I am, and that's Evelyn. And we met Julian, who's the founder of Matt Black. And we went for a breakfast meeting with him, the CEO. So we start at 9 a.m., and maybe those of you who know Matt Black, you might know Julian and that he does like to talk. So we soon stretched the breakfast meeting into a lunch meeting. And then we soon stretched the lunch meeting into a dinner meeting. And by the time that we were finished, it was 9 p.m. So it was at
12-hour meeting.
Yeah, it was a good day. So at the end, we then realized that Julian cannot close up the office. It turns out he doesn't have the right keys because it's been so many years since he was the last one in the office that they've since changed all the key sets, and no one told him. So it'd been a weird day.
So and a little bit of alignment missing there. It was autonomy, but maybe a little bit of alignment missing.
So it'd been a weird day, and it was a bit strange on reflection. Like, how does a CEO have time for a 12-hour unplanned meeting and not even have the keys for his own company? And what we'd seen during the day was that Matt Black looks like a really boring place, like The Office, the TV show. But actually, it's a very radical place that runs itself. So just like the cell structure that I mentioned earlier, each person in Matt Black is treated like a business. So each person who we met, like Alex, Nick, and many others not on the screen, they're treated like a business. They have a profit and loss sheet, and their payment is related to how much profit they make. Also, there's no divisions or departments in the company. So Alex has to do everything himself. He sells the projects, he designs the products, he manufactures them, and he goes and delivers them himself. And they're not doing easy work. It's an aerospace engineering company. They're making parts for planes. So it's pretty impressive. And that also seems really counterintuitive to everything that we know about business, right? Like, what about division of labor? What about specialization? Isn't that much more efficient? But what Alex was telling us is that because he can sell the project, he sells it in a way that he can actually deliver on it. And because he designs the product, he designs it in a way that's as easy for him to manufacture as possible, because it's his time. So he was making big efficiency gains, and actually Matt Black, their productivity's gone up 300% since they transitioned to this model. So Alex does do everything, but if he's very busy or if there's a task that maybe Nick is better at, he can outsource that task to him in like a marketplace, just like any business could. And then if everyone gets really busy and they need more people in this marketplace, they can bring in a new person, like say Josh. But they can't hire Josh because there's no hierarchy. Instead, it's like a business. They have to invest in Josh. So Alex will give £10,000 to Josh's new business, and Alex takes 5% equity in Josh's profit and loss. And that also gives Alex a real incentive to make sure that Josh does well. He feeds him little pieces of work, he gives him mentoring, and although it looks like a very individual system, through these mechanisms, it all becomes very collaborative. There's also no need for firing anyone, because if they run out of money, they can just leave. So what's happened at Matt Black? Productivity's gone way up using this. Customer satisfaction's gone way up. They went from being one of the worst rated suppliers in aerospace to one of the best. And the pay for individual people like Alex, Nick, Clive, on average it's gone up 100%. So
That sounds unbelievable, right?
yeah, it was a strange few days.
That's why he needed 12 hours to explain.
Yeah, so and then we spent a couple more days with the other people there, seeing how it already works. So after that, we went and we investigated the hub and spoke model. So this was with Handelsbanken. Does anyone know Handelsbanken? Cool, a couple more people. So Handelsbanken is a Swedish bank. They're quite popular in the UK. And the way they work is that each branch is treated like its own business. So they can make decisions on marketing, how much do they spend, what's their messaging. They can make decisions on how much do their products cost. They can make decisions like, should they lend money to this customer or not. And that's a lot more effective than if some central hub was making those decisions based on an Excel sheet, because they know these people, they know the local context. And what's happened is, because they're close to the customer, the amount of loans that they lose through people not paying it back is now one of the lowest rates of the banks in the UK. But what's different to Matt Black is that they do have kind of the London headquarters, which provides them with core technology, provides them with some financing, which, you know, an organisation like a bank may need. So what happened with Handelsbanken is that they've been voted to have the best customer satisfaction of any bank in the UK for the last 6 years in a row, better than HSBC, Barclays, anyone like that. And that says a lot, given that no one trusts banks. Like, this really points to the future of where banking needs to go. And then lastly, we looked at the network. So does anyone know about how the Spotify model works? Cool. Yeah. So the way that Spotify works is that each team owns one tiny piece of the product. So you've got, you know, one team that owns like the playlists, one team that maybe owns like the discovery and search feature, one team that owns the advertising part, and they can do everything that takes care of that part of the product. And they don't need to come together and have big meetings to centralize everything. They just work with the parts of the product that their part connects with. So what that means is that they can move much faster than anyone else. Apple and Google, who are throwing money at trying to enter the music space, are not able to keep up with them. So these were the structures that we saw. It gives you a very high-level snapshot of how these companies are working. But it's not really enough to make it work in practice. So we'll go into who is the new employee.
So like I was saying before, this is not really an employee, right? It's a value creator, right? It really shouldn't matter whether a person is a freelancer or whether they are a formal employee or something in between or something farther, right? So that's why We are always talking about the people formerly known as consumers, because we also believe that that's a very wrong way of labeling all of you, saying, oh, you are consumers. Your sole purpose in life is to consume. Same thing. Employee is the wrong term. So we prefer to talk about value creators, which again is a bit of a academic term. So who is this new person, this new value creator? So I'm going to make the most obvious statement ever, which is that people are the most important element of a value creation network. Why? Because they're not robots. Okay? So if I have a very structured organization, imagine an army, right? Very, let's say old-fashioned army. Sorry, I should say old-fashioned army. Or very old-fashioned tailorist organization. I don't need necessarily this kind of people that we're going to talk about, right? Actually, that would be much easier to do with AI and robots. But if you think about this kind of networks, we actually do need real people. And so the people are important, and the interactions between the people are important, their attitudes. So this is an example. This is a company called WD-40, one of those other cases that probably many of you know. It's a lubricant company. They make, lubricant. Oh, how exciting. So when you join, you need to take a couple of pledges. That's the type of mindset they have. So one of those pledges is called the Learning Maniac Pledge. So you actually don't need to read the whole pledge. Already from those 3 words, you know that this is all about, you are responsible for taking action. You will go and ask for help. Nobody's going to ask you, hey, how's that project going? You need to go and tell somebody else how my project is going and how you can help me. So this is not for everyone, right? At Matt Black, for example, what happened to the people?
Well, they started as a traditional business, and when they slowly transitioned to this mad business, about half the people left. That way of working was not for them.
Yeah. So there are sort of 3 fundamental things to think about according to what we do. And also we can talk about this a lot from our own experience, right? Because Claro Partners operates a lot in this autonomy and alignment way as well. So the first thing, what we are looking for is people that thrive in a culture which is not based on norms, not based on standards. So people need to be self-motivated, need to have self-discipline, have empathy for others. Then they need to be adaptive. They need to be able to, what we in Claro call, embrace ambiguity, right? And they need to have or can acquire multiple skills. So that's why we are misfits, right? Because we are these multi-skilled people. So we would never fit in an organization where they're looking for specialists. Need to be holistic thinkers and responsible risk takers. Risk takers is great, but if you're a crazy risk taker, right? Not a good idea. And they need to be all about finding solutions. Detecting problems, finding solutions. So that's why you need to be curious, resourceful, and really, really important. You might think it's all about individuals. You need to be very collaborative. So while you would think, oh, these people met black, they kind of operate in isolation, the reality is no, they are very collaborative. So what is their experience from recruit to alumni? You know, when you think about that, of course that has to be different as well. Many of us are experienced designers, right? So how now do we redesign the experience of these values creators before and after they enter the organization?
So what we saw is that it can't just be in the structure, it can't just be in the people you hire, but we need to rethink the everyday experience for the employee. We need to we think of it like a customer journey, an employee journey. We have to rethink every single touch point that they go through in their experience. So this is all of the things like, how do they find out about the company? How do they get interviewed? We're looking for a totally different skill set, so we need to rethink that. How do they start? How do they get rewarded at work? And how do they leave? We need to rethink every single one of those interactions. So in the interest of time, I'll go fast. We'll just go through one. And I can share what it's like on your first day at Claro. So imagine in a normal company, you go in for your first day, you maybe meet your manager, they start handing you work, they start giving you responsibilities. At Claro, that doesn't set you up in the right way for what it's going to be like at Claro. No one's ever going to put work on your plate. So instead what happens is that you go and you have to set up all your meetings yourself. It's just a small thing, but that's the way it's going to work. No one's going to come and train you for everything. It's actually like a self-led course where you have to pull people in to come and educate you. And no one's going to give you work. You have to go and basically lobby to get onto the proposals or get onto the projects that you're interested in and that there's a need for. So if you take that mindset and you apply it to all of these touch points, you actually end up with a very, very different organization. So we talked about the structure, the employee, the experience, and we could delve into those in a Q&A or in the break if you like. But then the next question is, there's so much to do. How do you make the transition from a company like Standard Bank to implementing the pilot that we made for them?
Yeah. So, very briefly, it's very important to understand that transformation has to be done both bottom-up and top-down, right? In a traditional organization, you can do things top-down. In chaos, you can do things only bottom-up, but you definitely need at least the support or the interest of the leaders of the company. So at ING, they decided to adopt the Spotify model, and I went to visit them and I saw how they are working. It's definitely not as easy as making a music listening system as a whole bank, right? So definitely struggling, but clearly there it was one big rollout, and it met black.
Yeah, the opposite. So we have this crazy visionary system that Julian kind of ended up with, but he never had a vision to end up with it. He just started with one little experiment. So it was around Christmas time, and he was noticing that all of the workers were working overtime and getting overtime pay. So he said, okay, we'll do an experiment. This year, no one is working overtime. There's no overtime pay. Suddenly, productivity shoots up. Everyone's working really efficiently, doing the same amount of work in their given hours. So what he realized by doing this experiment is that everyone was working overtime because they want some extra money around Christmas to buy gifts for their family, look after their family. So what he realized is, okay, from this experiment, I need to redesign our incentives so that people are rewarded for productivity, for their outputs, rather than the inputs, the time spent. And that increases autonomy for the individuals because they now have control over their incomes and how much they work. But it also increases alignment for the organization because you're paying according to results.
All that sounds all fantastic, right? But I think, and this is something I popped in yesterday night, because I realized that really the really core thing that makes all this work, and it has of course to do a lot with the people part, is you need to have a set of guiding principles, values, however you want to call them. And it sounds very attractive, to go to a website of a company that you like and copy and paste their values. Because they sound kind of good. Yeah, these all sound also kind of good, right, for you? But that doesn't work at all, okay? So we didn't write down this set of values that are very core to what Claro is and where people are evaluated on and recruited on until 5 years into the journey. So a lot of those values, we were living them as a group, and we were organically creating them. Most of them were not created by us as leaders of the company, but by the people who were coming in and out of this group of people. So that's a closing thought that I want to leave you leave you with, and then as a summary.
So we said that the traditional organization is struggling to attract talent, and we said networks are much better suited to providing for customers and providing that value proposition to employees. And we said for these networks to function, we need to have autonomy and alignment. And for that, we need the right structure, the right people, and the right day-to-day experience. And while that all sounds pretty difficult, there are ways to transition and roll out. And if Standard Bank can do it, I think any company in the world could probably make it happen. So now, I don't know how much time we have for Q&A. Oh, yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. So officially it's the coffee break, right? So I never want to keep people from the coffee break. Maybe I go. No, sorry. But no, what I want to say is that I don't want to hold you hostage here, okay? It's autonomy and alignment. So the alignment is that anybody who wants to go for coffee now, please do. Anybody who wants to stay as long as you want until the organizer kick us off the stage, okay? So we are here to answer questions, and we can answer questions in the coffee break. And Harry will be there also around for the lunch break. But any questions or objections, things that you want to share with the rest?
You started out with telling that you want to create value for society because then value for the organization follows. I'm wondering what you are going to do about all the people that are not talents, because you are only creating organizations that attract talents. So,
very good question, and I really like that you have been paying a lot of attention, because that was one little comment. So yes, creating value for society is very fundamental for us. The idea is that you can easily create value for business and destroy value for society. Just think about financial services. So we don't do that. We refuse to do that. Okay? So then about your question about what about talent? You're creating value for talent. You only can attract certain type of talent. What about the others? Right? Is that what you're asking? Right? So on one hand, this kind of organizational experience design is not our core. Core business, right? Our core business is experience design for people. So we have done a lot of work, for example, in India and Africa, to help those that live off, less than $2 a day, help them take better care of their children's health. That is work with NGOs, obviously. And so in that case, we are very passionate and very effective in creating value for society. Now, the other question is, maybe Harry has a better idea how to answer.
Yeah, I don't know. I wanted to jump in. I think what's amazing about these organizations is they're learning organizations. Every day you're doing things, you're learning, and it's creating talent. It's helping people refine their talents, explore their talents by giving that autonomy rather than just having them do machine work. So I think these are the ones that will help bring talent out of people. And I mean, Aldo mentioned work we've done. We do work with the Gates Foundation, with UNICEF, but actually I think this project had a bigger impact than many of them on the world, because think of all those people stuck in offices doing boring jobs. And think of Standard Bank that has thousands and thousands of employees, and we've been running a pilot that they're rolling out in parts of their organization where instead of people being locked doing really dull work from 9 to 5, they actually have ownership and care about it.
Like stamping papers, right? Yeah.
Me being a Swede, I know everything about the story about Handelsbanken that started out in the 70s with a major crisis for them. They were like not making money and being a very, very hard situation. So they made a transition. I think it was like first 1 year with a major transition and then 3 years of reinforcing it. Do you see the option of going into organizations that are not in a crisis and doing this? Or where is the starting point for you guys when you're allowed to do this type of translation?
Yeah, no, definitely. Standard Bank wasn't exactly in a crisis. And how it started was that we did this big program with several banks, which was about the financial services of the future. Financial service for an always in beta world, right? Where the customers are different. How do we cater for the new generation of customers? And they said, this is fantastic, this is great, blah, 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 blah. This will help us to make better products for these people. But we don't know how, right? We know what we have to do, but we don't know how. We don't think that the way we are organized today, we're able to deliver on this promise to those customers. So definitely I would highly recommend organizations to not wait until the crisis, because the time is really moving fast. Such a cliche to say it, but it's really, really true that time is moving so much faster that if you're not, like the other day, yeah, that's a good story. UBS, sorry, I shouldn't mention the name. A big bank, big bank, very high-powered top executives. I'm sitting with him. I only have 10 minutes with him at a conference, and he's like super challenging and really not my kind of person. And he's like, I don't believe in all that bullshit. We don't need to innovate, blah, 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 because we are a fast follower. I said, good luck. Because even if your strategy is to be a fast follower today, you actually will need to be an innovator. Do you understand why? Yes? Because if you will wait until Denmark, right, this is a real story, if you wait until Denmark introduces mobile pay, Danske Bank, and like, is any Danish here? Danish? No? So in Denmark, now 80% of all the people, not of Danske Bank customers, use mobile pay, and probably right now it's even more, and all the shops are accepting it, so it's just flooded the market in only 1 year. Exactly. So it goes really fast, right? And so this smart gentleman, he said, okay, I'm going to do that in Switzerland. I'm just going to hire exactly the same people that did it in Denmark, and they're going to do it in Switzerland. Do you think that will work? No, exactly, because Swiss are not Danish. So you need to understand real customers, and you cannot wait until something comes to the market and then copy it, because it's way too late, because there's hundreds of people doing mobile payments, right? And having been doing that for a long time, so not a good idea.
And just to add to your comment, coming from a banking background, financial service background, my observation is bankers do not understand that they are in real crisis. Many of the bankers do not understand that they are in real crisis, and if they don't act, banking will lose its relevance. And doesn't matter if it is a top 5 global bank or a Santander kind of business model, they need to change the way they bank. Otherwise, there is no future for the banking.
So I had one more question, because you kind of jumped over the one slide or only spoke very briefly about the hub model. But I see that's happening quite often in large global organizations, more hub and spoke model. But that also brings a whole new dynamic of how the independence of the spokes and the dominance of the hub. What's your experience with that? Because we're talking really about the people and how they work together, but this comes into some real tricky dominance.
Yeah, give me the hard one. Yeah, I mean, I can only agree that that's a great insight. So the companies that we visited, that struggle was exactly going on. So Startup Bootcamp, this accelerator network, it started like the single cells, and then the hub is now growing and kind of imposing itself on those cells. Yeah, don't really have an answer other than to say I totally agree that's happening. That's the challenge they need to think about.